Hey everyone, Matt here from Dr. Running, and today we're going to do a 100-mile review of the ASICS Gel-Kayano 31. Now this is ASICS premium stability shoe in comparison to the more inline shoe like the ASICS GT2000. It is become a more higher stack height shoe, and how stability is done in this shoe has changed quite a bit over the last few years. Version 30 was the big departure. 31 kind of refined some of the elements a little bit, made the 4D guidance system a little bit more bouncy, and we'll talk about how that's done over time. But really the purpose of this review is to get you updated on how it's performed after 100 miles. Most of our shoe reviews are usually in the realm of 30 to 50 miles. I want you to be able to get some information about how it does longer than that. I'm really hard on shoes, so obviously durability is a big question, and we will talk about that and talk about who this shoe might work best for, and some things that I actually think it works really, really well for, despite its kind of larger weight. So let's start off with specs first. In my men's size 10, this comes in at 11.2 ounces, or about 318 grams. There's a 40 millimeter heel, 30 millimeter of forefoot for a 10 millimeter drop, although it feels slightly lower than that because the Flight Foam Blast is actually pretty soft. So the ride overall is on the softer side. It's not mushy. It's not a New Balance 1080 where it's super soft underfoot. It's very well balanced, but it is on the softer side. This works really, really well for easier efforts. It works very well for longer standing as well as walking. I will say this is one of the, if you need just a little bit of guidance, or you're someone like you're a healthcare worker that stands on their feet for long periods of time throughout the day or on hard hospital floors, this shoe is absolutely phenomenal for that. It's also really good because some stability shoes have that really high arch that can be really irritating after a couple hours of standing or walking on your feet. This doesn't have that, and we'll talk about that in a second. How it does stability is a little bit different. There is still a very mild arch feeling from the medial sidewall, but it feels very balanced, cushioned, and it really, really keeps the feet happy for a long period of time. So if you are a healthcare worker or a retail worker, somebody that stands on your feet for a long period of time or has to walk a lot, this is a really good option. I really enjoyed teaching in it when I have long days in that because it just feels comfortable on foot for someone who needs a little bit more of a stable shoe. So it's been really good for that. I want to give it credit for that. It's not a fast shoe. It's not light. 11.2 ounces or about 10.7 ounces in men's size 9. It's not a light shoe. It certainly feels like that. There are some shoes that feel lighter or heavier. This shoe feels about like that. When I'm running in it, it's not a light shoe. It's not something I'm going to take for a faster day, but it's also not the heaviest shoe on the market. It's a lot smoother than previous versions, and part of that comes from actually having a decent rocker here. This has gotten a teeny bit more flexible, but if you want a flexible shoe, this is not it. If you have some toe mobility issues, you might be able to get away with this shoe, but it does tend to break in with time. The posterolateral heel bevel, which is getting better, is still not perfect. It is a little bit clunky while running, at least when you start. It has got a lot better. This geometry, and a lot of companies plan on shoes breaking in a lot more, and this did a really great job where it actually kind of pulls me to land right here and get a little bit more lateral. So if you have some lateral sensitivity at landing, this may not be a good shoe for you because it kind of teaches you to go and land right at this spot here. Still just a teeny bit clunky and a little bit better for slower paces for that reason, just based on how it was designed, but it gets better over time and breaks in. It's not as bad as some of the other ones, the previous versions that just had a lot of clunk just because there was either posterior flare in the heel or there was just no bevel at all. It's getting better. It still needs to be a little bit more ASICS, you're getting better, but it is much better and it keeps you kind of lateral at that heel. Then going through the rest of the shoe, very nice and stable. Wide platform, midfoot very is wide, forefoot's very wide. There are sidewalls here in the rear foot that keep the foot really centered back here, so rear foot, again, is really stable. Midfoot is really, really good because the sidewall continues into that. And then what's interesting about this shoe is, yes, it's wide, it's got sidewalls. There's internal geometry inside the foam that you can't see that as you land will keep you a little bit either centered or slightly lateral for those who either pronate or if you even go supinate too far, it's going to keep you really nice and centered. It feels very stable walking in it. Not like, oh, I feel something jamming into my arch, but it feels very stable. Now, this 4D guidance system is a more responsive foam and works very similar to how the medial longitudinal arch, i.e. your inner arch, actually works. So when you run, and I don't get this standing because it doesn't engage this, but when you're walking or running, when you land and pronate here, this actually is more responsive. It kind of bounces you back, which is how your arch is actually supposed to function. You are supposed to pronate. You are supposed to go into pronation for you to be able to shock absorb when you're landing and during the first half of gait. But then the second half, you need to be able to bounce back out and actually resupinate and come off. So you need pronation, you need supination. You just need to have them happen at the right time. So this has been really nice where it doesn't feel like something's jamming into my foot. And honestly, as soon as I put these on, how do I say this? It's not like I feel the stability, it's just I can forget about the shoe, which is really nice. Somebody who needs stability, I don't feel something jamming into my arch, I don't feel myself getting tired. It's just real nice in there and keeps you moving forward, which is nice. So very different type of method than a lot of companies that just use a really hard piece right there. But if you like a higher arch or stiffer arch, this is probably not going to be the best option for you. It's going to be better for those who just need help with that motion and aren't necessarily trying to control things or stop motion, just trying to facilitate it. So it's really nice. It is noticeable. The longer I've worn this, the more I've kind of felt that interesting bounce. It's not too aggressive. I will say if you have sensitivities to going too far lateral at the forefoot, when this bounces you out, that might bug you a little bit. At times I felt the muscles on the outside of my leg, called my peroneal muscles, get just a tiny bit grumpy, but that's over longer miles. So very well cushioned, really interesting stability method, very stable, not in your face, just keeps you moving really, really nicely. And then the foam, like I said, really soft. The transition, it's a little okay here, moves fairly decent through here. Not the stiffest thing on the market, but obviously a little bit more maximal and taller. And really great for easier runs. The upper is where things have gotten interesting because previous Kayanos have really fit narrow. The 30 changed that. 31 emphasizes a little bit more. The fit's actually fairly wide. I have had no issues with slippage, but the forefoot, it does fit lower volume in terms of lower height, but there's plenty of stretch here. So probably one of the more comfortable uppers, which is also why this shoe works really well if you're wearing this all day. Again, for walking, for standing, can be really, really comfortable. You might not want a bright yellow if you're standing all day and working, but you know, no judgment on that. I didn't have to secure anything. A lot of padding back here. There is a stiffer heel counter, but there's so much padding it didn't bother me. And it's done really, really well. So no wear on the upper, really just a little bit of dirt, which is what happens when you're me and just take these and get them dirty. But really nice fit that's also opened a teeny bit. So if you want a little bit more room, this is also going to be really good. And finally, the outsole. Outsole's holding up super well. This is my left shoe. For those of you that follow this channel, you know that I'm really, really, really hard on shoes. It's held up super well. I am probably getting ready to tear this off at about 100 miles, when you don't have a full-length outsole, that kind of happens, but it's handled really, really well. This exposed 5-foam blast is not as chewed up as I would expect it to be. This is held up really nicely. And so you're going to get a good number of miles out of these. And I will also say the midsole durability is held up really well. It's still slightly soft. It doesn't feel mushy. It's not hardening up. It's just really nicely balanced. So kind of like the previous version, which I had same kind of thoughts, the Kayano 31 is still a good durable shoe that works really well for walking, standing, and running at slower speeds, jogging. You know, you can do some longer efforts in this stuff, but it's handling stuff really well. It's a new age stability shoe, meaning that it doesn't have the traditional post. It's actually doing exactly the opposite. We're trying to bounce you out. And I think it's done a really, really good job. My only things for ASICS is I would like you, since you don't need a heavy post, to consider trying to lighten this shoe up a little bit. Not, you know, we're getting better technologies. I want to see some new stuff. You also still work on that heel bevel a little bit, but I just want to see the next version lighter. But right now, if weight isn't the biggest deal for you, it's a really solid and really comfortable shoe that I would highly suggest if it fits what you're looking for in terms of a little bit more room, different type of stability, very stable throughout, and really, really comfortable. I really want to know what you all think about this because, again, this might be a really polarizing thing. So please let me know in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree with me? Is this comfortable for you? Yes, it's a little heavier. It's not the fastest shoe for sure, which I'm still waiting for a stability racing shoe, and I guarantee no one's going to make that. But hey, maybe ASICS, you could bring back the DS Racer. Maybe. Who knows? So let me know if you agree with me in the comments below. And as always, hope this really helps you figure out what works for you and hope it helps you keep you relatively injury-free.